Welcome.
Welcome. It's so beautiful to be here in Santa Barbara, or it's so wonderful to be in beautiful Santa Barbara.
Well, how does it feel to be receiving the Outstanding Directors Award from SBIFF?
It's a thrill, of course, to be here. This is one of the great festivals, and Roger and this festival have been around and have really become a part of the firmament of the whole season, and I love it up here. It's kind of a trek we all enjoy making.
Can you talk a little bit about meeting with Bob Dylan before making the film?
Well, it was
leading up to the film.
Yeah, it was a thrill. It was a beautiful experience. I went in. I was a little nervous. Of course, you've got all the mythology of the ambiguous, mysterious, enigmatic Dylan. But what I found was an incredibly approachable, lovely man who we ended up spending 4 or 5 days just talking about his life and movies and all sorts of things, and it was incredibly helpful for my work on the script.
And can you talk a little bit about how the real Bob Dylan compared to Timothy's kind of method acting on the set?
I don't know how quite to answer the question. I'd say because the Bob Dylan I was meeting is 80 years old, and the Bob Dylan Timmy's playing is 19 years old.
Right.
And there's no known footage of Bob Dylan in 19 when he arrived in New York. So a lot of what I mean by that also is that you struggle sometimes when you make true life stories, because most of us have an imprint, a kind of memory in our mind that is more the most recent version of the person than the one you're making a movie about. I had the same thing happen on Walk the Line when Joaquin was playing Johnny Cash, and everyone was like, he doesn't look like Johnny Cash. And it's like, no, he doesn't look like the guy in the Hurt video, but he looks a hell of a lot like Johnny Cash when he was 22 years old on the streets of Memphis. So Timmy, I don't think is outrageously method or in any way kind of eccentric. He's just very focused on what he's doing, and in that way applied himself. I mean, what's really unusual about our film is that it's a film where the cast and the script and myself, we were all together over 6 years before we made it. So all the actors had an incredible opportunity to work the music, to work the character, to do research. Timmy traveled to Hibbing, Minnesota, lived for a week in his hometown. Tremendous amounts of just gathering vibes, gathering information, nuggets, stories, and all of that really enriches a performance.
It sure does. Now, of course, it's the 1960s period, and you've explored several films now from that period. What is the fascination for you about the 60s?
Well, it's multiple fold. I mean, I think that the 60s is a kind of turning point. It's also, the 60s is really 2 decades in one. In fact, this is one thing that Dylan himself said to me. He was like, there really is no 60s. There's the early 60s, which is really just the late 50s, and there's the late 60s, which is the early 70s. And that, the big change in the 60s occurs right about at the end of our film. And but I do have a fascination. Ford Ferrari, Girl Interrupted, Walk the Line, A Complete Unknown. I'm probably missing something, but what is it? I love the innocence of that period. I love, particularly if you're talking about films about the music business, I love the innocence of the music business. Music had not gotten quite so corporate yet. And I'll tell you, I'm a sucker for any movie, any period, pre-cell phone, pre-computer, where I don't have to do scenes of people gathering information from Google, or if they get in a crisis, pressing a single button on their phone and getting out of it. Life in so many ways was so much more exciting and cinematic prior to us carrying supercomputers in our pockets.
What's next for you?
I don't know. I'm not being cagey. I honestly don't know.
Well, whatever it is, we'll be anxious to see it.
I am too, or anxious to make it. Thanks so much for the time.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you.